to the Straight Red Card, and today Brett and I are going to take on the playoff semifinals, and then we'll also make some predictions on the LA final versus Houston. But let's start out, Brett, with Kansas City versus Houston yesterday. Obviously, Houston won it 2-0, and you just kind of go through why that happened, and just generally. Speaking, of course, even though Brad Davis went out, which is going to really hurt Houston when they play L.A., it didn't really hurt them too bad because, Moffitt's service wasn't particularly bad. They were actually, really good set pieces, and Moffitt was filling in really well for Brad Davis, but I do think that's gonna make a difference in the next game. But generally, I just thought Houston looked, they out-physicaled Kansas City, and they just looked like a veteran team that knew what the hell they were doing.
Well, I don't know if this section got cut out whenever we talked about the playoffs.
It won't be cut out.
That might have came up in a different part. But yeah, I claimed that Houston would beat Kansas City.
Oh yes, you did, and I picked Kansas City, didn't I?
You did, yeah. You picked the attack over Houston's blue collar work ethic.
Major,
and I thought that was what was really going to propel them into the final.
Yeah,
it was. So they were out physical. They are a team that plays not necessarily. It was not a direct game because they do. Like I said in the other part, they do keep it simple, stupid. They make the simple passes. They don't do a lot of the ticky-tacky type of play. I mean, They get out wide. They look for that cross. When you have a player like Ching in the middle of the field, you're looking for his head.
Yep.
They're a good team, and I'm not surprised by the result.
Yeah, I'm not surprised either. The only other complaint I had, especially about the call for the game, remember when Kalen Carr got the early breakaway, and then he had that shot, and everybody said, "Oh, that's a great save by Nielsen." And I think it was the save of the game. Well, frankly, Brett, I did not think that was a great shot. I thought that shot sucked. And I thought the save was relatively easy. Nielsen came off his feet to make it, and it looked real dramatic. But frankly, Kalen Carr, what are you doing? And Brett, as a former, or actually current club striker, and me as a former midfielder, when you have a breakaway versus the goalie, what do you not do?
You don't kick it high.
You don't kick it high. You make it
low. And those corners.
And Andy Gray says this, and he's been saying it for years. He knows what he's talking about. And of course, it's on FIFA. I don't know if Kalen Carr plays FIFA, but he would have noticed that the way you make things really difficult for a keeper in that situation is you kick it low. You make him dive to the ground, left or right. You don't kick it high. That was a big wasted opportunity by Kalen Carr. And did Kalen Carr, work his ass off during the game? Yeah, I thought he did. Do I really think he's that talented? I don't think he is, frankly, as when it comes to the skill part of the game. He's a great athletic player. He's fast, but outside of that, I'm not seeing, the kind of player who's going to finish those kind of things better than 50% of the time.
In this scenario, working off of Ching, I think it's a good
it
union.
Works. Yeah.
You've got the target man, you've got the speedy guy to play off of him. I thought Kalen really played a typical type role when he was with Chicago, coming in off the bench with 20 minutes left, playing as a super sub. His energy on the field plus his occasional flair that he would have in the box. I mean, I thought that was his best. The best utilization of his ability. Using him as a starter, he's gotten his goal in the playoffs, which was great to see. I'm glad to see him doing well. He was always the favorite when he was with Chicago. It's just with the constant injuries and stuff like that really plagued his playing time. Plus, it tempted the trade.
Yeah.
But I think he's an average, basically an average MLS striker.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing special, but he has the ability to create something special from time to time.
Yeah.
Nothing against him. I do like him, but
yeah. Well, and then as you said, he's been injury prone. Thus, the headgear that he wears as well to protect his skull. But one final remark before we move on about Kansas City. In the second half, Graham Zusi disappeared for me. I thought they could have brought in Davy Arnaud much earlier. I thought it was necessary. I thought when he came in, he made an immediate impact. However, they waited too long to do it. And then my final comment is on Moffat and his dancing in the locker room. I don't know if you saw that.
No, fortunately, I did not.
That was really scary. And I hope Moffat does not dance in his celebratory dance, whatever that was pretty scary. But
if they beat LA, then he can do it as much as he wants.
Yeah. Well, Dominic Kinnear once again showed he's the wizard when he gets to the playoffs. And, they've had a rough season here and there, but, the guy's just been consistent since he's been in Houston, and a model manager. That
despite some seasons with some unbelievably slow starts, he has been relatively consistent in his career with Houston.
God, they just managed to make it happen, don't they? But let's move on to LA RSL. Now, this game had, excitement written all over it. You thought this could be a real battle, a real back and forth. But in the end, it really came down to the fact that Beckham, I thought, was the guy delivering once again to McGee. It's the Beckham-McGee, connection. And those guys, once again, managed to start things off and that first blow. And then, of course, before that, I think you had the foul, supposed foul. You look back at the replay. I'm not sure it's really a foul by Williams on Gonzalez. But Gonzalez flopped like a fish, and he did a great job at selling it, and it was a PK. And Donovan, as he seems to do a lot these days, scores on a penalty kick.
Well, it was relatively exciting. It looked like anything you can do, I can do better type game at the beginning.
Yep.
LA scores, then Real Salt Lake scores.
Yeah.
LA hits the woodwork. Real Salt Lake hits the woodwork.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to continue that way.
Yeah.
I talked about the Beckham and the McGee combination. I think I read an article today on MLSsoccer.com that Beckham had talked with McGee's dad, and McGee's dad kept telling him, "If you keep finding him in the box."
Yeah.
And once again, proves that he needs to keep finding McGee in the box.
And I told you,
he's an absolute beast when it comes to playoffs. I don't know what it is, but it brings.
Oh, yeah, you cut out. I was going to say that the big thing about McGee, and I said this last week, had McGee started playing like this in his 20s, his early 20s, if he was pulling this stuff, he would have been not only highly touted as an MLS player, he probably wouldn't be playing in MLS for very long. It's just he's kind of one of those late bloomers, I mean, he's always been a solid player, but he's really one of the best players. I thought he played in this whole series. Now, granted, Donovan's coming back from injury, but he's really been the all-star outside of Beckham on this team. I know Dan Loney talked about Donovan being the MVP, but Donovan's not the MVP of this team. He wasn't last night. He wasn't the night before that. He's a solid player. But McGee really almost, he looks like a guy that had he started doing this 10 years ago, who knows where McGee would be today? Who knows?
So yeah, but as far as the Gonzo foul, when Williams jumped up into Gonzo's back, whether or not it was enough to really warrant a foul, even if Gonzo was fouled, he did sell it. The ref had no choice.
Yeah, he
had to call the PK. It was a stupid attempt for a ball by Williams. In the end, it was a PK, plain and simple.
I mean,
in my opinion,
it's a stupid attempt in the sense that he got called for it. Now, how many times during the season is he going to get called for that? I guess if Gonzalez sells it that well every time, then yeah, he's going to probably get called every time. When you look at that in instant replay, there isn't much contact there, Brett, at all. And that's the thing, I mean, you just have to live with those calls. There's nothing you can do about it. But Beckham, come on now. We've been, nobody wants to say Beckham deserves to be, MVP. I mean, you hear it from Harks. Harks is, he loves Beckham. You know, he's all over Beckham. He'd probably give Beckham's butt a butt rub because he loves Beckham. You know, and I understand why Hark says this guy's the class of the league. This guy comes out, he's been doing this all year because he has been doing it all year. I mean, what other player in the league can make something out of nothing with a 30-yard pass the way Beckham does? And I'm sorry, if you don't like David Beckham, and it's okay if you're rooting for another team and you don't like Beckham, but in this case, you have to at least objectively admit that the guy is still a big asset for LA and going into this final.
Oh, no, there's no doubt that he's a big asset. He's definitely a big asset.
Big asset.
Big asset.
Harks.
No, I mean,
rubbing buns. No, go ahead.
I mean, he's David frickin' Beckham. Mm-hmm. I mean, he can, as you say, he can lay that nice 40-yard cross to a person's head, to a person's foot, without trying.
That pass to McGee was ridiculous.
Yeah, and he's definitely an asset for LA. What I'm not looking forward to is if LA does win the finals over Dynamo, how many articles, even in the U.S., non-soccer site articles, or even worldwide, that are basically going to hand the success of LA Galaxy on to Beckham. Beckham leads LA Galaxy to the finals and wins.
I don't think they can do that, and here's the reason why they can't. They can't do that. Robbie Keane plays for this team. Landon Donovan plays for this team, and I think you're right. They're going to be those articles. They're going to be the headlines.
None of those articles because he's the golden boy of the designated player rule. There's been articles even when he was injured talking about him with LA Galaxy.
Yeah,
I mean it's going to happen if LA wins. There's going to be a ton of articles giving props to Beckham going into this league and flat out dominating. And it's just LA has, over the course of Beckham years, LA has shown that they are capable of winning without him. They show that they're even better with him. He's definitely an asset, but I'm loathing the prospects of seeing all these media rub as far as an ego goes. Not his ego per se, but like the ego that the media builds him up to be.
Oh, so the English press comes out and says that the LA Galaxy wins the MLS final because David Beckham's a badass. But what about that wouldn't be true?
Nothing about that isn't true, but it wouldn't be worded like that, I'm sure.
Well, no, that is kind of how it's going to be.
Beckham leads LA Galaxy to the finals.
Absolutely, but didn't he?
Do that. Not saying he doesn't do that. He has been a very huge asset leading up to this, but I'm just saying that LA is such a solid team that they have found ways to win without him. They find ways to win with him.
No, I understand what you're saying, and I understand that there are probably a lot of guys who are worried that this is just going to become a one-man bat-packing show after this is over, and it's all going to be because David Beckham did it all by himself. And if that's what you're saying, I agree that's not fair, because without Mike McGee heading those suckers in, they're not where they are now. Without Landon Donovan kicking in penalty kicks. Is that really a big deal? I'm sorry. Am I giving Donovan too much credit for putting in a free? I think I could have put in some of those penalty kicks. But anyhow, the point.
I feel good for him for putting one away on Ramon.
Well, yeah.
He barely ever does that.
Yeah, especially after their history. That was nice. But did you notice, because Donovan's thing about taking free kicks is he keeps his head up all the way to the last millisecond, and the only time he puts his head down even a little is to kick the ball at the last millisecond after he's already seen the goalie dive to one side or the other.
That's why he's a PK guru for both LA and the United States team.
But Ramondo knows this. So guess what? Ramondo has two things he does against Donovan that works. One, he'll fake like he's going one way and go to the other in that last millisecond. And the other thing he'll do is he won't do anything. And in this particular case, of course, he did not even throw a head fake, as far as I can tell, which you would think
stood to one side.
Yeah, it would think Romano would know better, but he just mistimed his move.